Happy Monday, 8th graders. We're back to another week of reading The Book Thief. We are on Death's Diary, Cologne. The fallen hours of May 30th. I'm sure Liesel Meminger was fast asleep when more than 1,000 bomber planes flew toward a place known as Cologne. For me, the result was 500 people or thereabouts. 50,000 others ambled homelessly around the ghostly piles of rubble, trying to work out which way was which and which slabs of broken home belonged to whom. 500 souls. I carried them in my fingers like suitcases, or I'd thrown them over my shoulder. It was only the children I carried in my arms. By the time I was finished, the sky was yellow like burning newspaper. If I looked closely, I could see the words, reporting headlines, commentating on the progress of the war, and so forth. How'd I have loved to pull it all down, to screw up the newspaper sky and toss it away? My arms ached, and I couldn't afford to burn my fingers. There was still so much work to be done. As you might expect, many people died instantly. Others took a while longer. There were several more places to go, skies to meet, and souls to collect. And when I came back to Cologne later on, not long after the final planes, I managed to notice a most unique thing. I was carrying the charred soul of a teenager when I looked gravely up at what was now a sulphuric sky. A group of 10-year-old girls was close by. One of them called out, "What's that?" Her arm extended and her finger pointed out the black, slow object falling from above. It began as a black feather, lifting, floating, or a piece of ash. Then it grew larger. The same girl, a redhead with period freckles, spoke once again, this time more emphatically. "What is that?" "It's a body," another girl suggested. Black hair, pigtails, and a crooked part down the center. "It's another bomb." It was too slow to be a bomb. With the adolescent spirits still burning lightly in my arms, I walked a few hundred meters with the rest of them. Like the girls, I remained focused on the sky. The last thing I wanted was to look down at the stranded face of my teenager, a pretty girl. Her whole death was now ahead of her. Like the rest of them, I was taken aback when a voice lunged out. It was a disgruntled father ordering his kids inside. The redhead reacted. Her freckles lengthened into commas. "But, Papa, look!" The man took several steps and soon figured out what it was. "It's the fuel," he said. "What do you mean?" "The fuel," he repeated. "The tank." He was a bald man in disreputed bedclothes. "They used up all their fuel in that one and got rid of the empty container. Look, there's another one over there. And there." Kids being kids, they all searched frantically at that point, trying to find an empty fuel container floating to the ground. The first one landed with a hollow thud. "Can we keep it, Papa?" "No." He was bombed and shocked, this Papa, and clearly not in the mood. "We cannot keep it." "Why not?" "I'm going to ask my Papa if I can have it," said another girl. "Me too." Just past the rubble of Cologne, a group of kids collected empty fuel containers dropped by their enemies. As usual, I collected humans. I was tired, and the year wasn't even halfway over yet. Next chapter is The Visitor. A new ball had been found for Himmel Street Soccer. That was the good news. The somewhat unsettling news was that a division of the NSDAP was heading toward them. They'd progressed all the way through mulching, street by street, house by house, and now they stood at Frau Diller's shop, having a quick smoke before they continued with their business. There was already a smattering of air raid shelters in mulching, but it was decided soon after the bombing of Cologne that a few more certainly wouldn't hurt. The NSDAP was inspecting each and every house in order to see if its basement was a good enough candidate. From afar, the children watched. They could see the smoke rising out of the pack. Liesel had only just come out, and she'd walked over to Rudy and Tommy. Harold Mollenhauer was retrieving the ball. "What's going on up there?" Rudy put his hands in his pockets. "The party." He inspected his friend's progress with the ball in Frau Holtzfall's front hedge. "They're checking all the houses and apartment blocks." Instant dryness seized the interior of Liesel's mouth. "For what?" "Don't you know anything? Tell her, Tommy." Tommy was perplexed. "Well, I don't know." "You're hopeless, the pair of you. They need more air raid shelters. What? Basements? No, attics. Of course, basements. Jesus, Liesel. You really are thick, aren't you? The ball was back. Rudy! He played onto it, and Lisa was still standing. How could she get back inside without looking too suspicious? The smoke up at Frau Diller's was disappearing, and the small crowd of men was starting to disperse. Panic generated in that awful way. Throat and mouth, air became sand. Think, she thought. Come on, Liesel, think, think. Rudy scored. Faraway voices congratulated him. Think, Liesel. She had it. That's it. She decided, but I have to make it real. As the Nazis progressed down the street, painting the letters LSR on some of the doors, the ball was passed through the air to one of the bigger kids, Klaus Behrig. LSR, Luftschutzraum, air raid shelter. The boy turned with the ball just as Liesel arrived, and they collided with such force that the game stopped automatically. As the ball rolled off, players ran in. Liesel held her grazed knee with one hand and her head with the other. Klaus Behrig only held his right shin, grimacing and cursing. Where is she? He spat. I'm going to kill her. There would be no killing. It was worse. A kindly party member had seen the incident and jogged dutifully down to the group. What happened here? He asked. Well, she's a maniac. Klaus pointed at Liesel, prompting the man to help her up. His tobacco breath formed a smoky sandhill in front of her face. I don't think you're in any state to keep playing, my girl, he said. Where do you live? I'm fine, she answered. Really, I can make it myself. Just get me. Just get me. Just get off me. Get off me. That was when Rudy stepped in, the eternal stepper inner. I'll help you home, he said. Why couldn't he just mind his own business for a change? Really, Lisa said. Just keep playing, Rudy. I can make it. No, no. He wouldn't be shifted. The stubbornness of him. It'll only take me a minute or two. Again, she had to think, and again, she was able. With Rudy holding her up, she made herself drop once more to the ground on her back. My papa, she said. The sky, she noticed, was utterly blue, not even the suggestion of a cloud. Could you get him, Rudy? Stay there. To his right, he called out, Tommy, watch her, will you? Don't let her move. Tommy stepped into action. I'll watch her, Rudy. He stood above her, twitching and trying not to smile, as Lisa kept an eye on the party man. A minute later, Hans Huberman was standing calmly above her. Hey, Papa. A disappointed smile mingled with his lips. I was wondering when this would happen. He picked her up and helped her home. The game went on, and the Nazi was already at the door of the lodging a few doors up. No one answered. Rudy was calling out again. Do you need help, Herr Huberman? No, no, you keep playing, Herr Steiner. Herr Steiner, you had to love Liesel's papa. Once inside, Liesel gave him the information. She attempted to find the middle ground between silence and despair. Papa, don't talk. The party, she whispered. Papa stopped. He fought off the urge to open the door and look up the street. They're checking basements to make shelters. He sat her down. Smart girl, he said, then called for Rosa. They had a minute to come up with a plan, a schmozzle of thoughts. We'll just put him up in Liesel's room, was Mama's suggestion. Under the bed. That's it. What if they decide to search our rooms as well? Do you have a better plan? Correction. They did not have a minute. A 7-punch knock was hammered into the door of 33 Himmel Street, and it was too late to move anyone anywhere. The voice. Open up. Their heartbeats fought each other, a mess of rhythm. Liesel tried to eat hers down. The taste of heart was not too cheerful. Rosa whispered, Jesus, Mary. This day it was Papa who rose to the occasion. He rushed to the basement door and threw a warning down the steps. When he returned, he spoke fast and fluent. Look, there's no time for tricks. We could distract him 100 different ways, but there's only one solution. He eyed the door and summed up. Nothing. That was not the answer Rosa wanted. Her eyes widened. Nothing? Are you crazy? The knocking resumed. Papa was strict. Nothing. We don't even go down there. Not a care in the world. Everything slowed. Rosa accepted it. Clenched with distress, she shook her head and proceeded to answer the door. Liesel, Papa's voice sliced her up. Just stay calm. Verschlitzt? Yes, Papa. She tried to concentrate on her bleeding leg. Aha! At the door, Rosa was still asking the meaning of this interruption when the kindly party man noticed Liesel. The maniacal soccer player, he grinned. How's the knee? You don't usually imagine the Nazis being too chirpy, but this man certainly was. He came in and made as if to crouch and view the injury. Does he know? Liesel thought. Can he smell we're hiding the Jew? Papa came from the sink with a wet cloth and soaked it onto Liesel's knee. Does it sting? Her silver eyes were caring and calm. The scare in them could easily be mistaken as concern for the injury. Rosa called across the kitchen. Can't sting enough. Maybe it will teach her a lesson. The party man stood and laughed. I don't think this girl is learning any lessons out there, Frau Huberman. The cardboard contorted. Frau Huberman. I think she teaches lessons. He handed Lisa a smile. To all those boys, am I right, young girl? Papa shoved the cloth into the graze, and Lisa winced rather than answered. It was Hans who spoke, a quiet "sorry" to the girl. There was the discomfort of silence then, and the party man remembered his purpose. If you don't mind, he explained, I need to inspect your basement just a minute or two to see if it's suitable for a shelter. Papa gave Liesel's knee a final dab. You'll have a nice bruise there too, Liesel. Casually acknowledged the man above them. Certainly, first door on the right. Please excuse the mess. I wouldn't worry. Can't be worse than some of the others I've seen today. This one, that's it. The longest 3 minutes in human history. Papa sat at the table. Rosa prayed in the corner, mouthing the words. Liesel was cooked, her knee, her chest, the muscles in her arms. I doubt any of them had the audacity to consider what they'd do if the basement was appointed as a shelter. They had to survive the inspection first. They listened to Nazi footsteps in the basement. There was a sound of measuring tape. Liesel could not ward off the thought of Max sitting beneath the steps, huddled around his sketchbook, hugging it to his chest. Papa stood. Another idea. He walked to the hall and called out, Everything good down there? The answer ascended the steps, on top of Max Vandenberg. Another minute, perhaps. Would you like some coffee? Some tea? No, thank you. When Papa returned, he ordered Liesel to fetch a book and for Rosa to start cooking. He decided the last thing they should do was sit around looking worried. Well, come on, he said loudly. Move it, Liesel. Don't care if your knee hurts. You have to finish that book like you said. Liesel tried not to break. Yes, Papa. What are you waiting for? It took great effort to wink at her. She could tell. In the corridor, she nearly collided with the party man. In trouble with your papa, huh? Never mind. I'm the same with my own children. They walked their separate ways, and when Liesel made it to her room, she closed the door and fell to her knees, despite the added pain. She listened first to the judgment that the basement was too shallow, then the goodbyes, one of which was sent down the corridor. Goodbye, maniacal soccer player. She remembered herself. Auf Wiederhausen. Goodbye. The dream carrier simmered in her hands. According to Papa, Rosa melted next to the stove. The next moment, the party man was gone. They collected Liesel and made their way to the basement, removing the well-placed drop sheets and paint cans. Max Vandenberg sat beneath the steps, holding his rusty scissors like a knife. His armpits were soggy, and the words fell like injuries from his mouth. I wouldn't have used them, he quietly said. He held the rusty arms flat against his forehead. I'm so sorry I put you through that. Papa lit a cigarette. Rosa took the scissors. You're alive, she said. We all are. It was too late now for apologies. Next chapter. The Schmoonzeller. Minutes later, a second knocker was at the door. Good Lord, another one? Worry resumed immediately. Max was covered up. Rosa trudged up the basement steps, but when she opened the door this time, it was not the Nazis. It was none other than Rudy Steiner. He stood there, yellow-haired and good-intentioned. I just came to see how Liesel is. She heard his voice. Liesel started making her way up the steps. I can deal with this one. Her boyfriend. Papa mentioned the paint cans. He blew another mouthful of smoke. He is not my boyfriend. Liesel countered, but she was not irritated. It was impossible after such a close call. I'm only going up because Mama will be yelling out any second. Liesel! She was on the fifth step. See? When she reached the door, Rudy moved from foot to foot. I just came to see. He stopped. What's that smell? He sniffed. Have you been smoking in there? Oh, I was sitting with Papa. Do you have any cigarettes? Maybe we can sell some. Lisa was in the mood for this. She spoke quietly enough so that Mama wouldn't hear her. I don't steal from my Papa. But you steal from certain other places. Talk a little bit louder, why don't you? Rudy schmuzzled. See what stealing does? You're all worried. Like you've never stolen anything. Yes, but you reek of it. Rudy was really warming up now. Maybe that's not cigarette smoke after all. He leaned closer and smiled. It's a criminal I can smell. You should have a bath. He shouted back to Tommy Mueller. Hey, Tommy, you should come and have a smell of this. What did you say? Trust Tommy? I can't hear you. Rudy shook his head in Liesel's direction. Useless. She started shutting the door. Get lost, Sokol. You're the last thing I need right now. Very pleased with himself, Rudy made his way back to the street. At the mailbox, he seemed to remember what he'd wanted to verify all along. He came back a few steps. Alles gut, Samensch? The injury, I mean. It was June. It was Germany. Things were on the verge of decay. Lisa was unaware of this. For her, the Jew in her basement had not been revealed. Her foster parents were not taken away, and she herself had contributed greatly to both of these accomplishments. Everything's good, she said, and she was not talking about a soccer injury of any description. She was fine. That's all for today. We will talk to you again on Tuesday.